Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. This is another Red Pill Religion podcast, and this is John Baptiste doing doing tonight's show. And with me today, we have Comrade Dimitri. Say hi, Comrade Dimitri.
Privyet, I'm the Russian bot, always interfering in your elections.
Okay, so tonight's talk is going to be about the importance of sacrifice. The word sacrifice is used a lot in in today's political discourse. Um, you hear people like Jordan Peterson talk about sacrifice. Sacrifice is a good thing. You have areas of Christianity that talks about sacrifice. Wars are won because somebody sacrificed their lives for their unit. World War I, World War II. There's plenty of stories. Like every single Medal of Honor winner from World War I and World War II, the Medal of Honor winner was not alive to actually accept the award, um, because they did that ultimate sacrifice. But you also have the smaller sacrifices too, like you sacrifice, you know, men sacrifice their time with their family to provide for their family, work jobs and stuff like that. Um, and mothers, they sacrifice, you know a full career, to be mothers. It's just a trade-off. um and and I want to know what you guys think about that. I personally think that sacrifice is important for is important for Western society. Western society was built on sacrifice, and it continues through sacrifice. Um,
Well,
what are you guys'
civil,
opinion on that?
civilization in general was built on sacrifice. You had to make sacrifices in order to advance. I mean, the early civilization builders of ancient Mesopotamia could never have gone anywhere without making any kind of sacrifice. People had to sacrifice to a central authority, the kings or whatever. And yeah, you have to make those kind of sacrifices if you want to get anywhere in society.
What do you think, Eric?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I second that. Sacrifice is necessary for entire civilizations to thrive, and it's also necessary on an individual level as well, I think.
Well, what do you mean by that? That might give us a segue into um, the next point.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm trying to think of a good example. Um, Say you're trying to get better at a particular activity, like maybe fencing or some sport or whatever. Um, you're going to have to sacrifice some physical comfort along with some other things to achieve that. Um, I know that was maybe a bad example, but I'm sure it gets the point across.
I think it's a good example, and it's accurate. Um, Russian bot, what do you think?
Oh, sorry. What was that? I wasn't paying attention.
Um, we were talking about sacrifice and um, like the importance of it on an individual level, not
Oh
just.
yeah, definitely. On an individual level, no one can really get by without sacrifice. The people who don't sacrifice anything are the kind who, just kind of live on state handouts or welfare, and are welfare bums generally. And yeah, if you want to get it by anywhere, you have to sacrifice, time to go to college or go to work or whatever, so you get to the next level, sort of like a video game.
Right. Well, with I would argue that not everybody on welfare is on welfare because they didn't make sacrifices, or because they're
No, of course not. I'm not saying that at all. I mean,
Oh no,
I know that.
I'm just trying to make it clear to the audience.
Sure, yeah. And even if you are a welfare bum, you do have to make sacrifices to actually get it. You know what I mean? So even if it's much smaller.
Yeah. I mean, and that goes to something else about sacrifice. You have these small little sacrifices, small little things that you do to you give up something. That's what a sacrifice is. You surrender something for the sake of something else, or you give up something. And the most common sacrifice is time. You also have, in cases of coal miners, they sacrifice parts of their body. So do service members. There's all kinds of sacrifices that can be can be talked about, but from more of a Christian perspective, I think because there's some people in the manosphere, men's rights, PUAs and MGTOWs and stuff, especially MGTOWs in my opinion, seem to completely dislike the whole entire idea of sacrifice. Especially sacrificing something for somebody else, as far as MGTOWs are concerned. And you have a lot of talk about male disposability and stuff like that, and it's one of those things it's bad and it's unfair, to a certain extent, but it also helps. It helps create a better future. For example, during the Industrial Revolution, with the child slaves that were taken off the streets and put into factories. The chimney sweepers that were taken off the streets as orphans and sold. Oliver Twist was based on things that actually happened. But those sacrifices of those children, and many of them sacrificed their life or limbs. That led to the idea of child labor laws, of the idea of childhood and stuff like that. So, I mean, what are you guys' thoughts on that? Like, what are some good things that sacrifices of others, even if it was unwilling, brought about something good as a net benefit?
Police officer sacrificing his or her life to protect the community.
Okay, I can see that. What about you, Eric?
Yeah. Am I coming in? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I think you mentioned service members earlier. I was gonna bring up the military because I figured that might have been a better example of self-sacrifice. And I do believe you have firsthand experience in that, John Baptiste. So, in some cases, in more extreme cases, you do have to. You have people giving their very lives up to protect their loved ones, and that's certainly that's seems to be a symptom, if you will, of heroism. So I think I think punting it over to service members would be a good example of that.
Okay. All right. Does any of you guys have anything? I'm gonna pass the book off to you guys for a second because I'm gonna look at our chat. So if you guys have anything to say while I'm doing that, it'd be good.
Hey, Brass.
Hi, Miss Russ.
Hello there. How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. excited for Halloween?
A little bit.
Yeah, Halloween. I'm gonna go as Jason or something like that. Freak people out.
Hey,
That's
there's a good
lovely.
example of sacrifice. Halloween. I mean,
There you go.
you gotta sacrifice some money to buy candy, right?
And buy Halloween costumes, and the more time you sacrifice, the more time. Or
you gotta.
yeah, you got to sacrifice more time to
Um,
put together a better Halloween costume. So you catch my drift.
I would dress up like Jesus, but I don't think anyone would buy me as a half naked Jew.
Plus, you're white, Brass.
Yo, yeah, that's true too.
Okay.
I'll be called culturally appropriating the Jewish people.
Well, most Jews are actually white. Most Ashkenazi Jews are white.
Well, that and I'm also German, so I have to hate the Jews.
Well, it's there's a certain thing. I mean, with what do you guys think about the biblical type of sacrifice where Jesus sacrificed himself for other people, and
Well, you have to remember, God sacrificed himself to himself so he could appease the sin that he himself created.
Oh, that's a common atheist trope.
it's I would disagree with that, but
But he was also sacrificing to save humanity too, not just himself.
Well, yeah, that too.
Who else?
You know what Jesus was doing on Good Friday?
Oh, what?
Hanging around.
I think that somebody else wanted to say something.
All right.
It shows up as unknown in the live chat here. I'm guessing that's Mixed Barbie.
Yeah, it's me. Hey, everyone.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey. How's everyone doing tonight?
Doing pretty good. We're just
You're
talking
in-
about sacrifice.
Like, what kind of sacrifice?
Oh, the kind where, we just lay you down on a pyre and we tear out your heart with a melon baller.
Yeah, Aztec sacrifice.
Ooh, that's sacrifice.
Well, more like the sacrifices of that men and women have to do to keep society going. That sacrifice is a good thing, and ultimately, things like disposability are sections of an ideology that it's trying to give victimhood to men for some reason. What do you think would be an interesting, not interesting, but what do you think are important sacrifices that women have to make?
Oh, that's a good one. Women have to make a lot of sacrifice with jobs, with having kids, we're having to go on like school meetings, or if the kid's sick. I think women has a lot. People think women don't have a lot to do. Women have a lot. They'll wash clothes. I mean, I don't have any kids, but I'm just as you can just tell with others and my other family members, and it's a lot. It's a lot for a woman, I think, nowadays. It's a lot.
Yeah, I would agree.
Oh.
There's a lot of things that my mom sacrificed to help me and my brother and sister out, and it's I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Yeah,
good.
mothers are always known for the sacrifices they make, especially if they're a single mother. Then they give up a lot.
Yeah.
Like my mom sacrificed a lot. Like in terms of the time, effort, and energy she had to put in to raise me, and
Yeah.
doing that all by herself, that is a big sacrifice.
Yeah.
But yeah, sacrifice would really, I I would consider a sacrifice something that it may not be something you necessarily want to do, but it's something that you know you have to do in order to achieve some greater good.
Yeah.
Like I would say a soldier who goes to war is sacrificing a lot. Like they're potentially just, sacrificing their life and their body, but they do it in a way because they feel that they're doing what's best for their country.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Speaking of that,
There's
I always wondered, do they have like a Veterans Day in Iraq? I mean, we have that in here, but I wonder if they have that there.
I don't know.
Usually, in most countries, they have like a national day in which they also celebrate like Veterans Day and their equivalent to Memorial Day.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, with Memorial Day was basically a holiday to memorialize the people who died in World War II. In places in Europe, it's called Armistice Day.
Oh, okay.
Armistice Day. The whole red poppy
Well-
thing. That's where that comes from.
How about like
You know what I would have? Yeah. Oh, I would have said. No, I think we should always just do anyway. I think we should just have like get rid of Veterans Day, and Memorial Day, but just make one big holiday and just call it Soldiers Day.
how about Love Day?
that's
Love.
originally what they did with President's Day. Originally, you had like Lincoln's Day and Washington Day, and there were so many, commemorable presidents that they just combined it all into one day, President's Day.
Yeah, and that would just it would shorten things up a little bit, and it still gets the message across that celebrate all. It would say celebrate all soldiers that have ever been in the military.
How about and like like you said, Iraq again? How about like because of their religion though? Aren't they like I know they're Muslims, Christians, and what else are they?
Hindus.
Hindus, and what's not ISIS? I'm sorry. What's the name of that? Not Muslim.
There's in Iraq. There's Islam.
Yes. Like
Islam, Christianity, Judaism,
Zoroastrianism.
Zoroastrianism. Yeah, that's it.
Druze is another one.
oh,
As is Yazidi faith.
Are they?
Yeah.
That's actually in practice. I mean, right now, I don't. Right now, it just seems like Iraq is a very big conflict zone. Anyway,
yeah.
it was a conflict zone earlier in the 2000s, and but it's. I'm of the mind that because I actually talked to Iraqis that live in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
They were before we actually invaded. They were on the verge of doing their own little revolution against Saddam. According to some,
Well, the Kurds are fighting them.
yeah, the Kurds were fighting them, but there is also there is a Sunni contingent that
Mm-hmm.
not like that. They were the biggest. They were the majority of Muslims in Iraq, but they were also the most persecuted.
Oh.
The Shiites and the Sunnis, they have bad blood between them, and it's kind of like the Catholics and the Protestants, but a little bit more bloody.
Was it Saddam Hussein a Kurd?
No, he was an Arab.
He was an Arab. But what Saddam Hussein, his actual government was based on the writings of an atheist philosopher who created the
Nietzsche.
Arab socialism. Essentially, that's what it was.
Yeah, Baathism. It's basically an ideology that's a syncretic ideology that combines the ideas of both Hitler's National Socialism and Stalin's International Socialism.
But it was written before either of those two things happened.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Really?
I think the guy who first created it, the philosopher first created it, was in the late 1800s.
Oh wow.
I'm sure it had different stages of development, though.
Oh,
Well,
what?
Saddam Hussein. Well, here's the thing about Saddam Hussein. Also, that I learned that he actually was very much loved reading atheist philosophers such as like he read Nietzsche and he'd also read Marx. You know, he had read both of them, and he was very much into atheist philosophers for a while. It wasn't until, and like what people fail to mention about Saddam Hussein, they think he was this big Islamicist where he believed in a theocracy, but he was actually a secular ruler.
No, that was one of the mistakes that the Bush administration thought about Saddam Hussein's regime. They thought he was funding radical jihadi groups around the world, but he really didn't because
Yeah,
he
but
was secular.
I mean,
yeah, he was a
he
he was
did.
a secular.
He did.
It wasn't until like later on in his life, like about a couple years before he died, when he really started embracing religion. And he didn't even. He still kept a secular government. He just pushed for Islam a little bit more before he died.
Well, he allowed for all different faiths to actually be practiced in Iraq. He didn't impose Sharia law. He allowed drinking. There is a lot of liquor stores and stuff that were burnt to the ground during 2003, 2004
Oh wow.
by Islamists. But he wasn't an Islamist. He was a secular leader. It's one of the things that he would do though was whenever something went wrong, he would do public executions. And it'd be like this, and the Jewish Iraqis were spies of Israel. The Christian Iraqis were spies of the United States, and then the Sunni Iraqis were, I don't know what he would call them. Nobody would actually say the word that he called them, but he would just be pointing fingers whenever something went wrong. He would be like, all right, it's the U.S.'s fault, and he would put out his propaganda, and he'd do a show execution, and everybody lived in fear. They were afraid when Saddam Hussein went underground. There are still Iraqis today that believe that Saddam Hussein is still alive in a prison somewhere in the United States. There was actually a theory that Saddam Hussein was taken back to America, and he was playing golf with President Bush.
Yeah, and that makes no sense. Saddam Hussein wasn't good at golf.
So, how do you think the women's lived when he was still alive? And the woman.
Oh, he was like a notorious womanizer. Son Fude Nude.
I think he called himself Muslim because one of his wives was a Shiite Muslim, and I think that's how that happened. I'm not sure though.
Well,
I do.
He also a good thing about him though is that what he did do undeniably good was the fact that he did do a better job than previous rulers did at protecting Christians in the land.
Yeah, but at what cost? Because hundreds of thousands of people died under his rule.
Well, yeah, I agree. Like, I'm not saying he's a perfect man by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying if you compare the number of Christians that before were just massacred before his rule and were massacred after his rule, you find that he did better than his predecessors did in protecting. The reason why he protected them really was because he could sympathize with them because he was a part of a minority group of Muslims.
Oh.
And so he could sympathize with Christians because they're also a minority group.
He was also a revolutionary too. His platform took over the monarchy country after Britain left, because Iraq used to be a British colony, and then when the British let go of Iraq as a colony, they established they reestablished the monarchy, and then Saddam was like part of the revolutionary movement, and supposedly the CIA helped him take over the monarchy because they thought that they would get oil. And then after one of the things that he did do was he would sell oil during the UN embargoes. He would sell oil to places like Afghanistan and other places that couldn't afford to buy the oil from the Saudis.
The USSR.
Yeah, he would sell that to them too. That's one of the reasons why the Syria pipeline is important to Russia and to the United States.
Oh, and if you want to hear about sacrifice, here's the thing you have to remember with these countries, like these Middle Eastern countries. Some of them have more money than Hollywood and like all our biggest cities put together, and yet they still choose to live like in poor homes, and they choose to forego a lot of luxuries that we have in the United States. They choose that, even though they have more than enough money to be able to do it.
Well, in Kuwait, for example, has one of the highest. Had, I'm not sure about right now. I think they still do, but they have one of the highest costs of living, and most of the good homes are in the actual city itself, the Kuwait city, and the different cities around Kuwait. There's like 4 cities, beautiful cities, and that's where a majority of the middle class, the upper middle class, and rich classes live is in the big cities, and then all the poor people live out in the desert. And a lot of them are Bedouins that actually live the way that the ancient Arabs did.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
a lot of them choose. A lot of them choose to live like that too. Some of them have the means, but they just choose to live poorly because they feel they want to be like Muhammad, and Muhammad, foregoed a lot of luxuries in order to do his mission.
Well, that and it's always how the Bedouins and those people of the Near East have lived since basically the time of ancient Mesopotamia too.
So it's basically like a tradition then, like their cultural tradition.
Yeah.
Like the one thing you'll know about Muslims is like they're commanded to give to charity. They're commanded to they're commanded to live a life of what do they call that? I'm trying to think of how the word proper modesty would be a good word for it. Where like even the kings and the rich people there don't really use their money as much as like we would think they would do outside of like the bare outside of buying a couple houses and and funding their military. That's pretty much a lot of where their luxury comes into.
Well, it's the common thing in the Arabian clans that they would distribute money and coins to the people, in kind of like an even manner. And this continues all the way up in Saudi Arabia or Qatar. If you go to either of those countries, everyone gets like a per capita check to, spend.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. So everybody get a little bit of money. Everybody gets a little bit of money. Oh, wow. So, like, if we travel, like, as Americans, we go there now, how do you think they would treat us?
Well,
They'll throw our asses out.
Well, in Kuwait, we actually have to follow their culture.
Just don't. Hey, whatever you do not tell them you're an American journalist.
Well, with in Kuwait at least, the women have to cover up with a hijab.
Oh.
And the benefit to that though is that if any man talks to you while you're wearing a hijab and you don't show them their hair, they'll get beat up by a group of men. Like you talk to a Muslim woman who does not actually do the proper signs that says, yes, I will talk to you.
Mhm.
You will get beat up by Muslim men. So that there's a yeah, you have to cover your hair.
Mhm.
You know, the hijab is the open scarf. And you know that there's the sign that I want to that yes, I'll talk to you if you're not actually related to them, is that they'll show off their hair to you. That's the sign that yes, you can talk to them. And if they don't do that in public, then
Oh wow. So like if I went there now and I wore a hijab and I took my the hat off so they can see my hair and I actually married one of those guys, could I come back to the US or I have to stay there?
well, you can come back to the U.S. because it's Kuwait, but in Saudi Arabia, I don't think so.
Ooh.
Like Kuwait
Well,
is
you have to remember,
liberal.
Saudi Arabia is a theocratic monarch.
Mhm.
Their king is actually very young there. I think he's only like in his 20s.
Yeah, he's a reformer king. Although he's,
Yeah.
destroying
Oh,
Yemen
and
right
guess
now.
what? He did something that none of his other previous kings did. Now women are able to drive in Saudi Arabia.
Mm. Oh wow, that's great.
Although on the bad side, though, the number of car accidents has dramatically gone up.
That and he's destroying Yemen too. So with his intervention,
Well, the king of Saudi Arabia is also did other things. The more recent king has helped to stop the Islamic police, which that's the whole weird thing. One of our local religion people that come in the Discord every once in a while. He's Muslim, and we did a stream with him last year, I think, and he actually talked about this where the government was starting to crack down on the Islamic police, the Sharia police, essentially.
Mm.
But I'm not sure about the public the the public punishments if they stopped that or not. But in
Mhm.
the early 2000s, they used to do all sorts of weird punishments, like
Like they would chop your hand off for stealing.
Ooh.
yes, and if you actually touch little children, they castrate you in the street.
Ooh, really?
Oh, well, we need to keep that law.
Well, it's the really heinous crimes. The whole reason for the public punishment is to discourage other people from doing it. You know,
Oh.
the
And
thief,
it works.
the thief doesn't have his hand anymore, but
Mm.
guaranteed in that area of the city,
They're not going to steal.
thefts would go down drastically.
How about when the men throw acid on their wives? Like, there's a lot of acid attacks around there too. That's
Yeah.
scary.
That's a weird thing. That's a weird thing that is like that's
Yeah.
debated within the Muslim community whether or not that is actually halal to do.
Mm.
Some are like, yeah, it's all right, and then others are like, no, that's un-Islamic. I think that's a conversation for Islam,
Mhm.
ultimately, because I'm not a Muslim. You know, whatever I say,
Mhm.
change. I'm not very well read, and
Well, I mean, you have to remember, you're also a soldier, so they would hate you probably.
Oh, you're a soldier?
I used to be.
Oh, okay. Was you in the Navy or Army or Air Force?
I was in the army.
Okay.
I was in Iraq for a little bit.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you for serving our country. I didn't know that.
You're welcome. But it's there's within the in the Muslim world though, there are sacrifices that men have to make. Like for example, we hear about all the horrible stuff, the extreme stuff that happens, but we don't hear about the poor people whose brother who's you have a brother that is killed and they have a wife and family. You automatically inherit the family, the debts of your brother, and you have to take care of his wife and child. And they're not actually, his wife is not actually legally obliged to get married to you.
Well, yeah, and it's that follows from the biblical perspective of a Levite marriage, where basically, and a lot of people say, well, that's immoral, but I say if you really think about it through a non-Western lens, it actually makes a lot of sense. Because the thing is like, women are expected to be, I'm trying to think of how to word it correctly. Like, women are to be taken care of by the men, they're to be protected by the men, and the whole point of the kind of Levite marriage is like, if you say you're married to your husband and he dies, well, his brother will, now inherits the wife and stuff, but he does so the woman can be protected.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And it's they're not in most cases though, you're taking in your brother's family and you already have a family. That's where the polygamy actually comes into, is that they very rich, they'll take multiple wives for themselves. But often the more poorer people that have multiple wives because a family member was killed and suddenly their wife is theirs. And
Well, like with Muslims, for example, like even in the Bible, really, in the Quran, polygamy is typically like a last resort. It doesn't endorse it. It just says like monogamy is the ideal, but it does recognize that in some situations polygamy is unavoidable, and it just makes rules around it, saying, when's polygamy okay? And basically, like, the one time polygamy is allowed in the Bible and in the Quran is in war situations. Like, if a whole bunch of men die and women are left without their husbands or anyone to take care of them, then it's perfectly fine for men to take more than one of them, take more than one wife in order to make sure that these women have support.
And on the same token, the grieving widow whose brother you're now living in the house, their household, or you're controlled by, the money and everything is controlled by the brother now. Yes, and I'm talking more in where this stuff is actually a more of a burden. The lower classes, the middle classes, and the upper classes, I don't think it's seen as that much of a burden. But you have that aspect, but then you also have the sacrifices that women make to to be protected, because a lot of them in the Muslim countries, whether it's social conditioning or that's just how they are there. I'm not exactly sure. I don't think that anybody in the West that hasn't spent considerably more time than I have there can actually fully say, because our media just tells us what they want us to know.
Yes.
So it's I'm sure that there's
There's a lot of negative stereotypes about Muslims, and I know plenty of good Muslims.
Oh yeah.
Like for the most part, a Muslim does not want to kill you. For the most part, they're just. In fact, most Muslims I know are just very good people who just like, they're very dedicated to their religion, and they're just very peaceful people. They're some of the last people you would expect to actually kill you when you actually meet them.
Well, a lot of Muslims in America, yes, there is a lot of immigrant Muslims, but there's also refugee Muslims from the 70s. You have families who ran from places like Lebanon and
Iraq.
Iraq and Iran
Mhm.
during the 70s when the Islamic Revolution was happening in the Middle East.
Don't forget Afghanistan too.
Afghanistan too. And a lot of these Muslims left because it's like, no, but the people in power, they're not following Islam, in my opinion, and they would flee because they knew that they were next, and they could get refugee status because it was a totalitarian thing that was going on. There's a lot of things that I'm sure that we don't know about today because it just wasn't reported. Um, but there's most of the Muslims here in America, are refugees of some sort from the different conflicts and stuff that happen
Well, technically, aren't we all refugees if you really go back far enough?
Well, yeah. That's
Yeah.
the whole point of our why we
I
are
mean,
Christians.
like for example, I'm descendant from Irish people who ran from British and Irish people
Mhm.
who they left their countries from the British so they could have a new life in America.
Well,
And what I always find funny is like people always talk about like how there was slavery. I said you never hear about the Irish people that got kidnapped and brought here.
Well, I mean, with that though, with the immigrants coming in from all over, they come over at great expense to them, to come here legally. Um, it's at great expense, financially and socially. They come here, they start at the bottom, and most of those families, there's the trope of the 17th, or not 17th, um, the 18th and 19th century American immigrants who would come here with nothing because they sold everything that they had in their home country just to get over here.
Mm.
Some people sold themselves into serfdom or indentured.
Oh, in case you're not wondering, serfdom is a little bit differently than slavery.
Yes,
You're allowed to have certain rights as a serf, but you are told how much you're supposed to produce. You're basically like you're basically like a farmer,
Okay.
a controlled farmer.
yeah, and they were paying back their debts, from the bigger, wealthier people, who
Yeah.
would be like, here's some land that you can farm off of, give us.
Yes, I mean it's not exactly like a lot of people like to say it's slavery, but in reality, a lot of people choose to do that,
Mhm.
and they're given certain rights. Like you're they're basically treated like some of them. It depends on where you're at, but a lot of them are treated like workers, where they're just there to pay off a debt, and they're told like how much that they have to farm and give to the country.
Mhm.
But it's that kind of work, and it happened in factories too, not just in farmlands. But farmlands are the easiest example in American history to go to. But what they would do is they come here, start with nothing, and sacrifice their time and in a lot of cases their lives, because back then the factory machinery, that was dangerous. Farming was dangerous because we had all sorts of predators that we don't have anymore because they were all hunted away, most of them anyway. So that was just to protect somebody else's property essentially. But it's it was a lot harsher environment in the beginning of this country, and the
What I always find funny is like also is like a lot of vegans say like how they don't like to have the blood of the animals on their hand, but they fail to realize is that when a person wants to farm their salad, they pretty much have to kill every animal that comes by that land, so they could make sure that they have that salad that they're eating.
Yeah.
But
So yeah.
People do their meat a certain way. The Jewish people, don't they?
Oh yeah, and Jewish people and Muslims both sacrifice their want for bacon.
well, not just bacon, but certain types of seafood.
Well, I mean, bacon. Giving up bacon's like one of the hugest sacrifices that you can ever make.
I love bacon.
I would argue giving up lobster and crab or just
Like there's Jesus' sacrifice, and then there's giving up bacon.
I mean, it's good, but it's not really good for you.
Well, it depends really. Like, have you ever known that they now make kale that tastes like bacon?
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, they put this. They put it through. They fry it and they put this seasoning on it, and they say it tastes just like bacon,
Oh,
and it's
wow.
healthier.
Yeah. Yeah. I like. I come back and be a vegetarian. I like ribs. I like pulled pork. I like steak. I like all
Oh, I
food.
love steak.
I don't know.
I like steak.
Vegan.
I like steak and chicken.
Yeah.
Although some of my friends they like eating their meat more raw, but I can't do that. If I eat, I have to have it well done.
Me too. Me too. I like my food. I don't like seeing blood because of the parasites and that's what they tell you on TV, and parasites and all different things. I gotta have my food well done. Food poisoning. I ate a raw steak I got food poisoning.
Yeah.
I had it really rare. That was my last time because I got food poisoning.
Yeah, it does that.
Yeah, but I don't know what is a full American. I don't like some people say they're a full American. What about people I know I think we're all immigrants. When you said we're all immigrants, I believe that. Because we came from over Europe and Middle Eastern. I'm biracial, so I have Greek, Persian, Black, and Spanish. So my family, worldwide in a way, but I don't
I'm half German.
Oh, okay.
So my mom was born in Bad Kreuznach, Germany, on a U.S. military base.
Oh,
and
okay.
yes, when she was a couple months old, her dad, who was in the military, my grandfather, they moved over to Florida, and that's where they stayed forever. So she was born in she had dual citizenship. She was both German and American because she was born in Germany, but she was born on U.S. ground.
Lucky. That's cool to have dual citizenship. That's good.
I'm biracial too. My father was full-blooded Comanche Native American.
Okay.
Member of the tribe, and I'm a registered member of the tribe too. But my mother, and her family were all Swedish.
If I give you a DNA test, Rob, would you turn out to be 1 in 124th Native American?
No, I would actually have a good chunk. I'm half.
If you get that reference.
Yeah, Pocahontas, Elizabeth Warren.
You ever go to the powwow?
Not yet. I plan to one day. But
you will love it.
They're fun.
Indians sacrifice a lot too. If you would actually look at them, where
the spirits
they'll sacrifice their time to dance and for the rain.
Yeah, but
it's there's a lot to the Native American culture that is
casino.
That is
Casinos
about sacrificing. Well, sacrificing for the tribe is a big thing within the lore of most Native American tribes. It's a big thing, among all people. It just seems to be a human trait, the willingness to
Well, you have to
sacrifice for
remember,
other
man.
humans.
Like, you have to remember, man, that all Indians were just tree-hugging hippies before Americans came and ruined it all.
That's not one single.
No, that's
I mean,
not
yeah,
true.
let's completely forget about the Aztecs and the let's completely forget about the Aztecs, some of the other neighboring Indians who were very known for scalping each other and killing each other.
My tribe. My tribe was a really fierce and warrior-like tribe.
Well,
So,
you also had back in I think it was the War of 1812, was a proxy war, that because the French used to use the not the I think it's the Algonquins, Algonquins against the Iroquois tribe, and the Iroquois tribe, they're a 4 different tribes: Mohawks. I think Comanches are part of that. I'm not sure the exact tribes anymore, but their way of society is actually something that our founding fathers really looked up to, because they had a kind of a democratic society, except for the women decided who was the leader, and the leader was always a man. And but they came together because of their war against the Algonquins, and you also have the Apaches, who are, I think they're at war with the Blackfoot tribe or the Sioux. I'm not sure which one, or the Lakota, not Sioux.
Well, you know Mr. T, right?
Yeah.
You know why he had the whole Mohawk thing?
What is that?
It was to celebrate his African heritage. His ancestry goes back to a tribe in Africa that shaved their head into mohawks.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he's also he also gave up his, he was always known for wearing those gold necklaces. He gave that up after going to Katrina. Visiting the people who were struck by disaster with Katrina. Because he felt guilty seeing all these people that lost their homes and stuff, and seeing himself going around with these gold chains on his neck. So, he sold them off and gave some of the money. He gave the money to charity.
Oh, that was nice. That's really nice.
Yeah. He's also, I didn't know, he's also a very devout Christian.
Yeah, I heard that. But one last thought on Foxahontas. She is not Native American. That's all she proved with that DNA test.
Well,
Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's 1 in 100. I mean, she's 1 in 1,024 Native American. So, I mean,
I heard that the Cherokee actually
wasn't that but wasn't that Native American like Southern South America Native American?
It's Mesoamerica.
I think I heard that somewhere. But
it was like
it's not. Her DNA has nothing to do with the tribe that she was in. Like she supposedly said she was in. Like even the DNA test that says like the 1 in 1,024 Native American, the Indian tribe would not even be anywhere near the tribe that she supposedly was at. If you actually find it, that's more funny. Is like the typical black person in America is more white than she is Indian.
Yeah, they say like I was reading about that too. They say like a lot of black people think they're Native Americans, but they're really like white because of what happened in slavery.
The one drop rule.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, it's like Thomas Jefferson and stuff like that. You know who came up with the phrase "once you go black, you never go back"? Thomas Jefferson.
That was Andrew Jackson.
Oh, really?
Well, I just find it funny, absolutely funny, when you actually do look at the history of Thomas Jefferson stuff. Like, people make it seem like he was the only person that ever slept with his slaves.
Yeah, a lot of them
like-
did.
Yeah, it's like, see, I'm surprised he's the only founding father we know of that did it.
Like some black cheeks.
Like, for example, like Benjamin Franklin was very known for being a womanizer, so I'm surprised we don't have records of him doing it.
Well,
Benjamin Franklin, the thing about Benjamin Franklin was that he actually came to condemn slavery and wanted it abolished in the new Republic of the United States.
Well, I mean, it's sort of funny, like how it went with both, like Benjamin Franklin and a lot of them and the Enlightenment thinkers. They talked bad about slavery, and yeah, they wanted to have it abolished in some ways, but a lot of them, they were more talk than they were action. Like, they were the type of guys that would write 5 or 6 books on why slavery is wrong, but if you asked them to arse themselves to make a protest against it, they wouldn't do it.
Yeah. But, Benjamin Franklin actually did set free his slaves.
Well, yeah,
Yeah, like
and Thomas Jefferson did fight to end slavery in Virginia or limit it.
Yeah, and you got to consider at the time too, both the U.S., the newly formed U.S. and British navies were trying to blockade Africa to keep more slaves from coming in because people were getting tired of slavery at the time, and it was slowly being abolished.
Well,
yeah,
majority of the slaves went to South America anyway. That's one of the reasons why Abraham Lincoln actually proposed instead of freeing the slaves in North America, because he saw that would be a problem. He wanted to send them down to South America where there was more people like them, essentially.
I thought he wanted to send them to Liberia.
I'm not sure. The what I saw that from the documents that I saw on archive.org, it seemed like the plan was South America, but it could have been Iberia.
Well,
you know, it was a weird alliance that did actually happen. The Nation of Islam and the Ku Klux Klan
and White Aryan Resistance.
They actually did join together in some. Well, I mean, it makes like you. So you have a black nationalist group and a white nationalist group coming together. Which is sort of funny because both of them think that each other's race is inferior. But here's the thing: they agreed on one thing at least. They agreed that black and white people should be separate. So they agreed on that. And that was basically their whole agreement on the issue.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they both agreed on that. They believed that black and white people should be separate. So that was basically the only thing they agreed on. And Malcolm X actually talked about that's one of the reasons why he left the Nation of Islam, because he wanted to, stop the KKK, and he found out that the Nation of Islam was working with them.
Yeah, and also Tom Metzger also met with the one of the top leaders of the Nation of Islam. If you don't know who Tom Metzger is, he was like a really noted white supremacist who founded an organization called White Aryan Resistance. And he basically formed an alliance with the Nation of Islam and even donated $100 to their cause.
Yeah, so I mean, it's weird how that stuff happens, but it does actually.
Yeah, that is weird.
Yeah. Also, one thing on Liberia too, I wanted to say was that Liberia was founded as a country to repatriate black, newly freed black Africans to Africa.
Well, in some places in Africa, they have a bit of racism going on too, where, like, kind of like the reverse apartheid and stuff, where they're actually a lot of the black leaders there are making white people live in slums.
Yeah, I see that on the Vice.
Yeah, that's happened. That's happened in South Africa, and that happened in Zimbabwe.
But I mean, that's not really all that surprising if you look at the history of Africa, particularly the Zulu uprisings. I'm not sure what they're exactly called. It was when the Zulu nation started to take most of Eastern Africa, and the Bantu tribe, and there's a lot of tribes that almost went extinct because of this. And they were some of these tribes, like there were lighter skinned Africans that were native to South Africa, but by the time
you're talking about the South African Bushmen. Yeah, they went almost extinct, and they're biologically the oldest people on Earth, the oldest ethnicity.
Really? I thought the Chinese were the oldest ethnicity.
The Chinese, they're the oldest living civilization.
Okay.
But they're not the oldest.
You know why? You know why Donald Trump hates China?
Why?
Because they have a wall and he doesn't.
They built the wall to keep out the invaders, so.
But and they still live poor. Oh, their country is rich, but they still live poor. I don't get that.
Well, it's what China tries to do. They mask this in sacrifice. What they do is that they tell the UN that they are part of the Human Rights Council, which is laughable. They're part of the Security Council, which is okay. And they're part of all these councils, and they're like, we're still a developing nation. We've been around for thousands of years. We're still a developing nation, and they actually try to tell the UN we're a third world country, essentially. And it's funny because they're like all these coal restrictions that you guys are placing on us really hurts the third world developing countries like China. And it's like, get out of here. No. They've done a few public addresses to the UN trying to say that they're a third world country.
Well,
that's another thing is like they're a very communistic system.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, in China,
like
it's
funny getting them on the human.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, they're very communistic, and they actually even today they're holding Muslims in concentration camps. Oh wait, no, I'm gonna use the Chinese lie that they're saying about it. They say they're not concentration camps; they're just places for the mentally ill and to stop them from being terrorists. That's completely believable.
Yeah, that's
political. About that concentration camps there.
But not only that, they also been literally butchering alive tens of thousands, perhaps even hundreds of thousands of Falun Gong practitioners since 1999.
Really?
Well,
yeah.
Wow.
That's something people will actually sacrifice themselves and pieces of their body, like the Falun Gong members. That to actually keep their faith. You have a thing with the Chinese government now going into Christian homes, taking all the Christian iconography, burning it in front of their house, and forcing them to sign a statement that they renounce their faith or they go to jail.
Yeah, I've seen that on the one website, so that is scary.
And another thing is like you have to take into consideration is that in China, like they look for any reason that because here's the thing, they have quote unquote freedom of religion in China, but what they do is like, so in order to look good and like they want let's say they want to tear a church down, they basically look for an excuse to tear down a church. So they could say, oh, well, we're not oppressing your religion. We're just following these rules. It's like, come on.
Well, the Chinese government is the only government that the Vatican ever actually capitulated to to allow them to be the deciding factor in who decides the bishop. And in China, also the Catholic churches can't really look like churches from the outside. They look like just regular buildings.
Oh wow.
Yeah, all the iconography and stuff like that, it was ordered to take down. There's a picture of a Chinese, not Chinese, Oriental Orthodox church and a Catholic church, and all the crosses and everything that actually said this is a distinctive place of worship was erased from the public view. And it's a weird thing that's going on because they're allowing it, but at the same time, it has to be part of the communist system. Like the Catholic Church, the Catholic Church's teachings has to, the Chinese government has to look through it and decide what is actually acceptable. Because one of their beliefs, one of the belief systems of the Chinese government is that religion is what is a cause of revolution, essentially.
Terrorism.
Religion is the thing that would make people not want to be communists.
It's the opium of the people.
So they're not going to start everything.
They also saw the importance that religion played in the fall of communism throughout, 1989 and 1991, and they're deathly afraid of that.
Well, yeah, and it's like they're doing whatever they can. They even burn Bibles nowadays because
Oh my god.
they're trying to quell. They're trying to quell. Well, atheists do that too here, but
It's not state.
but well, I mean, I just find it funny. It's like that's the only book that they've ever read, and they're burning it. But yeah, it's like they're burning the Bibles in China because they desperately want to stop the Christian revolution that's happening there.
Hmm.
Well, they Tibet is, according to China, part of China, and Tibet says no. That whole story is sad.
I was going to say, speaking of sacrifice, the Dalai Lama had to make a lot of sacrifices when.
Which one?
When he was in. He had to flee. He had to flee his people to actually keep the religion alive in neighboring India. Because when the Chinese came in, they basically started massacring a lot of most of the Buddhist monks and a lot of and a large chunks of the laity too. So.
I didn't know that. I thought
yeah.
China was Buddha. I thought there was basically the whole country was like they believe in Buddha. I did not know that. That's a fun
Buddha,
Well, I mean, Buddhism is even more so than Islam. Is people are required to live a life of modesty, because that's what the Buddha did. He lived a life of modesty. He didn't really engage too much in wealthy, even though the Buddha was a prince.
I didn't know that.
Well,
he didn't live. He lived in modesty.
He became the Buddha after witnessing the horrors of poverty, and then the story goes I think this was an Indian Buddha. He meditated. I forget what kind of tree. I think it's fruit bearing tree. But he meditated underneath this tree for like 30 days, and then he became enlightened and spread the I can't even pronounce the sutra that he wrote, but he wrote the sutra and he passed it along to everybody, and everybody read it, and it was basically, this is how you live a fruitful life. And in China, China is one of the few places before Christianity that actually had a monastic culture, a whole bunch of monks. The Buddhist monks, there's different types of Buddhism. You have the Shaolin Buddhism, the Taoism.
Oh wow!
During the Mao Revolution, all those different traditions, that did not capitulate to the Mao's idea of what the perfect Buddhism is, which is removal of all the supernatural from it. The ones that did not actually conform to that were killed.
Well, then what happened too was that Mao Zedong called the Dalai Lama to Beijing, and he had a private conversation with the Dalai Lama. And at one point, Mao Zedong said that religion is the poison of the people.
I did not
And
know
that his
that.
and that his Tibetan people were poisoned by religion.
So basically, the Communist Party wants to control every aspect of somebody's life. Every.
Yeah, pretty much. It was the same in the USSR as well. The Russian Orthodox Church was
And in Cambodia too.
what?
Oh, they said and in Cambodia too.
Yeah, the Buddhists in Cambodia and the Oriental Orthodox in Cambodia, but they didn't actually have the Oriental Orthodox didn't have as big of an influence in Cambodia as Buddhism did, but that did happen, yeah.
In Russia too, or the USSR.
Yeah, but you had groups of people during the communist regime who would, the Jews would they couldn't have a lot of times their prayer shawls were taken and burned in front of them, which prayer shawls are passed down from father to son throughout generations on the bat mitzvah, but a lot of during the communist regime, the Catholics, the Jews, the Eastern Orthodox, they didn't worship in churches anymore. They worshipped in basements, in places where the neighbor informants wouldn't actually tell, because they would have communities. It'd be like a communal thing, and they're all religious in some way, but they had to hide it.
Okay, got
A lot
you.
of ways. So in the bigger cities, though, you would have informants pointing out people who weren't communist enough, essentially.
And telling each other and stuff.
Yeah, they tell on each other. In something similar happened in Nazi Germany, but it really wasn't that extreme, because the Nazi propaganda was atheism and communism are both Jewish projects. So the people that didn't believe in God would not call themselves atheists in Nazi Germany, and you still had like the Lutherans and the Catholics, the different churches called the confession churches during that time, which would funnel out Jews and hide them in walls and in attics and stuff like that. Like Anne Frank's diary portrayed. There's also other diaries and things that were left behind that corroborated this. But there was an entire movement of people, like an underground railroad in Nazi Germany, trying to get these people out of Europe. A lot of them, some of them went to the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom would take them, open arms, and a lot of the fighting age men that escaped would go into the British military. My great grandfather, that's what he did.
Okay.
He went from Germany and into the United Kingdom, and he's like, I want to be part of your Air Force. And they made him part of their Air Force. But he was also German. He was part of the German Air Force in World War One. So he had prior military service.
Yeah.
But it's there's a lot of these things, during the 20th century. There's a lot of these stories of people that would protect one another, whether it be in Nazi Germany, hiding their Jewish friends in their basement, attic, or in their walls, or whatever, or in Russia, where you'd have communities sticking together and not telling on one another, because and these were horrible times. I'm not too sure about Mao Zedong's China because there's not a lot that comes out of China from that era.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah, it was the same thing. It was the same thing. I studied it.
we have
Oh,
accounts
okay.
from refugees that fled and went to like California and stuff. But
Wow. Were they on the boat or a plane then? Or
I'm not exactly sure how they did it.
oh, okay. Wow. So basically, the community had their own kind of like a secret society where they could help each other to get out or help them.
Yes, and that's something. Well, that also happened during the 30 Years' War too, when you'd have Christians, both Catholic and Protestant, protecting one another, while the battle between the kings, the Catholic kings and the Protestant kings would go back and forth. They didn't really care about the little people. So the little people would take care of themselves. And you have very fragmented stories, but there are stories of people actually coming together during this time and protecting each other, whether they be Catholic or Protestant.
That's amazing.
I mean, it's not as fully together as 20th century history, but there are
Mhm.
instances when this stuff happened. Even during the so-called, well, not so-called, the Salem witch trials, which what came out of the Salem witch trials is due process essentially.
Mhm.
But you had that in America, was people pointing at people and saying that this person was witched. My husband, could this woman cast a spell on my husband who caused adultery in a lot of cases. And then you have other cases where it was just children pointing fingers. And according to history, there is like this really this mold that grew on the wheat, and that's what started it all. That's one of the ideas that basically the precursor of LSD was the cause of Salem witch trials, but I think it was just jealousy.
Yeah.
But
Sounds like it.
I'm sure there are people that I'm not exactly sure, but I'm sure there are people who's like, this person is innocent. Because
Mhm.
if there wasn't, then the idea of due process and the idea of innocent, until proven guilty, wouldn't have become as much of a thing as it was. It was that event that and the idea probably persisted before, but that event was really what it was a stain. It was this horrible thing that the people once the people in the colonies. I think Salem witch trials happened during the colonies. I don't think it was during the original. It might have been, but it was just something that just made everybody sick to their stomachs, from
Yeah.
what I can gather.
Yeah, the Salem witch trials was during the colonial period of American history.
A lot of the Salem witch trials was basically like people just ratting out their neighbor that they didn't like and saying
Yeah.
they were witches.
Mhm.
Which
And
shows that
a lot of it, when you actually look into it, it had a lot of politics going into it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and that kind of shit happened during the McCarthy era, McCarthyism era too.
Yeah, like for example, a lot of the outrage happened because there was a new like priest there that they did not like. That a lot of people didn't like, and that's sort of what spawned the entire thing. Because it eventually just came from people that opposed the priest, and people just started writing each other out as witches.
Well, I mean, it that would make you think though. What with somebody who is an outspoken religious person or an outspoken conservative in today's climate, let's say that the far left actually gets what they want and completely abolishes due process and everything. It's how long would it be until somebody that a woman that doesn't like one of her neighbors or something points a finger and says that man raped me, and because we have to listen to all victims and all victims are correct.
Well, wait, no, you're wrong. You're wrong, man. It's not believing all victims. It's just believing all women.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's
They don't care about the men.
I'm trying not to be too unbiased on that, but yeah, you're right. The far left does say believe women, but but the far left also uses victim and woman interchangeably. But what kind of sacrifices would we have to make to in that kind of dystopian future, which I don't think is actually going to happen at all, but it just is a thought experiment.
Do you guys think that the media is trying to reprogram everybody's mind?
Yes.
There is yes, but it's a long answer of as to why, because it's if you know who Edward Bernays is, Edward Bernays was the guy who essentially invented Sigmund Freud, his uncle, in the United States. The reason why we have scantily clad women on advertisements nowadays is based off of Edward Bernays' work, say sex sells, essentially. And he used his uncle's work to actually justify it. It's like, yeah, we can make people pay what they don't really entirely need just by using sex, and that translated into entertainment, that translated into to some extent when the 24-hour news cycle happened, that came with the women anchors were
Pretty hot.
Yeah, they the women on TV, the women in TV advertising, the women that were news anchors, they always had to be sexually appealing for that reason. And yeah, and you have like all this imagery and stuff with and with the media, it's like as long as the person is attractive, really, whatever they say, people will listen to.
Yeah, like if like one person has a big butt, the media say, "Well, you need to get a big butt." Everybody wants a big butt, or for women.
Well, I mean, everyone likes big butts, and they cannot lie.
What do you do, Brad?
That goes with the rumor, and I'm going to say it's rumor and not fact, that Nicki Minaj had butt surgery to get a bigger butt. That was a rumor that actually existed like early 2000, whenever she came out. Like that's been a long time rumor of Nicki Minaj, is that she has a big butt because it was silicone enhanced.
I think it's silicone. I really believe. I've seen people with big butts every day. Real big butts, that's silicone. Like the way it's shaped and the way the underline of the bottom part of the butt, it's the silicone. I can tell you by looking at her butt, silicone.
I'll defer to your expertise on that, but it's I'm not going to say for sure. I don't know.
I mean, like, it looks like it's soft and it looks like it's huggable, but it's fake. Well, that's what they think men like, is a big butt, like so big.
Well, only Drake would really know, man.
Every man she messed with, no. But they had pictures of her when she was in high school, and her butt was like not as big as now, per se. But,
About 99% of Nicki Minaj is fake. She has more plastic in her than a Barbie doll.
But and people talk like that is actually a bad thing. There are people, and we'll call them white feminists, that that say that what she did was not right. You know,
Mhm.
because it's she was making herself better for money and essentially for male attention. And she's actually got Nicki Minaj has actually gone off on tirades about that, about this type of hate that she gets from what it seems like white women. When she went on her tirade against white feminism, that was one of the arguments in that tirade that she said she was tired of hearing. But
I would just tell anybody if they want a fake butt, make sure you get it from a plastic surgeon, like a professional, not these places like in motels or nothing. Just get it professional. I have that message.
If you
Yeah.
get it in a room, you'll likely see like your kidney removed or something.
Well, I mean, you have to remember. Well, if someone, just well, I have nothing to really worry about because my kidneys aren't worth a damn.
Aw.
But so yeah, well, then I would imagine it would take them longer just to get me to knock me out because I'm very hard to knock out.
Really?
Yeah. I'm what they call that, insomnia problems.
Gotcha. So about organ trafficking,
So-
do you believe that's true, guys? Organ trafficking, like you say, take somebody's organs or heart, eyeballs out, and people are kidnapping.
Well, I
What
mean,
happens-
I do believe that people steal pianos and sell them on the black market. If that's what you
Yeah,
mean
it
by
happens.
organ trafficking.
I like organs,
Yeah, it
not
happens.
that kind of like organs from your body, like like a heart or your eyes or
It happens all the time in by gangster elements and underground elements too, and in some countries like China, it's
Mhm.
done by the regime, the state
Really?
against certain. Yeah, that's what I mentioned about Falun Gong practitioners being literally butchered alive. They've had their organs harvested and killed so that they can keep the supply going on for their people, and so they're willing to sacrifice the religious group, which is the Falun Gong practitioners.
Well, you know how much service costs there?
How much?
Hmm. Very
An arm
cheap.
and a leg.
How much is for a leg?
An arm and a leg.
Whenever
and
if you ever if you ever need to get your organs replaced or whatever, never go to China because it's likely that the organ came from some poor sap who's suffering for their religion.
Ooh.
You want plastic surgery? Go to Brazil. Well, actually, no, better yet, Colombia. Colombia is the best place for plastic surgery.
Really?
Although the doctors there only know one specific side of surgery.
Really?
But it's cheap. Like, you get like $200 plastic face surgery there.
Really? I know South Korea, they are like the top capital of the plastic surgery. South Korea.
Well,
They-
yeah, here's the three things that you can get from Colombia.
Mhm.
Plastic surgery, cocaine, and prostitutes.
Also, guerrilla warfare too, or knowledge in guerrilla warfare.
well, I mean, I wouldn't go to Colombia for any of those things because
Oh wait, and coffee.
it is a possibility that the prostitutes, the coke dealer, and at least the prostitutes and the coke dealer are agents trying to arrest you for it. Because
But I mean, yeah, you just have to remember, man. It's like, well, I mean, isn't prostitution legal there?
I'm not sure.
I know in some
Okay.
places in Brazil it is.
It may have been, in the past, but it's right now with how politically turbulent Colombia is. I can't tell because right now it's they went from a kind of socialist system to a kind of communist system. Now they're
Well, I mean,
a system.
Colombia was very wasn't Colombia very much like Catholic? Because I know Pablo Escobar was a Catholic.
Yeah, yes. Colombia is Catholic, but it's there's aspects of the Colombian culture that with the war on drugs and the different communist revolutions that tried to happen in South America and the different socialist revolutions that tried to happen in South America. Colombia has been dealing with a lot of problems for many decades. Like the whole communist the communist aspect within Colombia were the people that controlled cocaine. So if you've ever bought cocaine between the 1980s to I think early 2000s, you're essentially
You know how badass Pablo Escobar was?
no. How badass was he?
He went to prison in a prison that he built himself.
Yeah, I've seen that on TV.
And his
Well,
prison
also-
literally had a tennis court on it.
Wow. Colombia also has many issues due to the fact that they just accepted a huge influx of Venezuelans fleeing Venezuela because of Maduro's bad Marxist economics there.
Well, I'm sure that they also have legal immigrants too. I do know that I saw on Viceland, which it's Vice, so it's the documentaries are kind of one sided a little bit, but did a documentary about this group of smugglers that would go from Venezuela, take Venezuelan gas, smuggle it into Colombia.
I seen that.
And that was that's actually pretty dangerous because
It is.
you have the different, and they're all doing it to try to feed their families. But
Mhm.
you have the if you get caught by the military doesn't really care. They could just bribe them, but you'd have people that died fiery deaths after
Mm.
and stuff like that. It
Also, you have to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Also, you have to constantly avoid the Venezuelan security services and the collective EZOs, who are basically government goon squads.
Mm.
Right, but it's Colombia. The Colombian government does not really like the Venezuelan government so much, so they actually try to. It just seems like it's the Colombian officials. You just throw money at them, and they'll be like, okay, So there's all kinds of things that are happening that can be described as sacrifice. Really. I think we've gone through a lot of it. We're almost 2 hours in, and
Really? What
Yeah.
the fast?
Yeah.
I had a good time.
So does anybody have any final thoughts before I close this out? We'll start with Eric.
Yeah, I think, there's a lot of sacrifices that people make. I believe that we had a good discussion over different kinds of cultures and how they go about it and how they express sacrifice, because there's many interpretations of sacrifice and depends on how well you define it. But I had fun discussing it.
Eric? You have any final thoughts?
He's grateful that he met Jesus with a Burger King hat on in the Sacred Vatican Church.
Guess not.
I guess he's having problems. We'll get back to you, Eric. Comrade Dimitri, do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, sacrifice. Without it, we wouldn't have this wonderful civilization we have now, and we'd still be in Paleolithic tribal societies. So yeah, sacrifice is important.
You have any final thoughts, Barbie?
Yes. I'm glad that we got to talk about different like countries and how they're sacrificed, and I think America, we have it made in a way. That's why we should make America great again.
Amen to that. Eric, are you any final last words?
You guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, no, not too much to add. It was a good chat.
Yeah. I do have one final thing. One of the somebody that we did not get, one of the heroes of the civil rights era, Martin Luther King. He was a great man, and he made multiple sacrifices for his ideas of nonviolent demonstrations.
Yeah.
And he ultimately paid his life for that, and his teachings, and I would say as an Orthodox he should be granted sainthood, even though he was Baptist. But Saint Martin Luther King, he his teachings and his actions and influenced a lot of our actual how our country is today, how we see things, how the idea that we need to focus on somebody's the content of their character and not how they look outwardly. That those kind of ideas were injected into American society, from that man and from the people who followed.
Mm.
So I think that is a good sacrifice to mention before we leave. Join us tomorrow. Tomorrow we are going to be doing a news live stream with me and Comrade Dimitri and whoever else decides to join.
Cool.
Yeah, and we're going to be doing that at about 9 Eastern Standard Time. Please give us a like. Please give us a subscribe. Tell your friends and enemies. God bless.
God bless.